So, Bruce, thank you for your time today. Let's get started with where you've been headed in the past 2 years. What's been happening?
What's been happening? Well, about 6 years ago, I'd left Ipsos and joined Vision Critical, and about 2.5 years ago, the particular arm of the business that I worked at Vision Critical was split off. So we were the research and consulting part of that business, and we were actually spun off, sold off as a separate entity to a new uh, venture capital backed market research company that was emerging called Maru out of the UK. And Maru is run by a gentleman by the name of Jed Parton, as the CEO of the company. And I believe he actually was just interviewed as well by Jack, or not by Jack, by Charlotte, for Media Village. And during that time, we've been building up the company. So we essentially started with we were a startup, but we were already 200 people coming out of the Vision Critical business. And our focus was really to focus on research that was technology enabled. I mean, I think that's sort of the trend that we're seeing in general in the marketplace. And specifically, building capabilities that really are platform based as opposed to a traditional research company, which tends to be very sort of methodologically focused, still very survey focused. Our feeling was, certainly going forward and even today, that companies want to work with partners who have an ongoing relationship with them, sort of always on, always delivering insights, both in terms of data as well as in terms of thinking. So that's really where we're heading, and we're doing so not only with continuing to partner with Vision Critical. We continue to use their platform for our community work, but also acquiring new companies that actually complement that part of the business that we're working on, but also enable us to do things on a standalone basis as well outside of communities. So community is still a big part of our business, but it's not the only part of our business as it used to be when we were part of Vision Critical.
Well, let's talk about your specific role. What do you do?
Yeah, so I focus on really the media and entertainment and consumer tech or media tech, ad tech, whatever you want to call that part of the business. Not so much the actual hardware technology side of the business, but more social media and digital media, that particular area. Obviously, as with our business, with pretty much with every business, technology seems to be kind of permutating every business out there. Research is no different, and so I not only work with technology, but I work with the technology clients, as well as obviously the traditional media companies, the content companies. But it's been an interesting time right now, certainly with the AT&T Time Warner merger going through, and this sort of pending merger world that I think we're heading into. Certainly seems to be conventional wisdom right now, and so we're seeing, obviously companies building out full capabilities in terms of, we used to call it script to screen. I don't know, script to screen and beyond really at this point, but being able to control the entire ecosystem from the standpoint of all the way from developing content to marketing it, distributing it, and continuing to sort of build franchises and monetize the businesses going forward. And obviously, there are traditional companies like Disney and Time Warner that will be part of AT&T, but certainly with Amazon, Facebook, Twitter, Google.
A lot more clients.
Yeah, I mean, a lot more clients, and a lot more activity in certainly in Hollywood as a result of that, which is great. But there is sort of the platform side of it too. It's not just about the content anymore. It's about how do we get content to the consumer in different ways, and with different genres. Obviously, news is been a big focus of social media, but I think even social media is adapting more to video content, and it always seems like everything always ends up at video, right? No matter where the company starts, it's video is always seems to be the end game, and certainly is the content that's probably most easy to monetize.
So Bruce, you mentioned the importance of video, and I think video is critical. But more and more people are talking about voice, podcasting, that kind of thing. Do you have any opinions on that?
Yes, I mean, obviously, I think voice activation is going to be the norm again in terms of, and I even see, probably not too far in the distant future, companies conducting surveys through Alexa and Google Home, etc. Again, there's certainly some privacy issues around that sort of thing, and I'm sure there'll be ways of working through that. Literally, again, creating panels of homes where people will opt in and agree to do this type of work. Also, I think we talk about voice, but audio, I think, is also sort of making a resurgence. We work with 4 or 5 companies that are very audio focused, and certainly, again, similar to video, audio is finding many new areas in which it can exist and thrive. I think the emergence of podcasts is only going to continue. And again, it's just the evolution of how the business is heading. People want to be able to listen to, same thing with video, listen to what they want to listen to when they want to listen to it. And I think more and more companies are realizing that, especially in the audio space.
So can you run me through a type of project that your company would handle?
Sure. I mean, in most cases, as I mentioned before, it really centers on a platform engagement. When I say platform, really a technology platform that allows us really to create really a single source panel for our clients, leveraging their consumer assets. So in most cases, going out and actually recruiting from a subscription base. We run a number of panels for OTT services now, and other distribution platforms, and obviously they have a subscriber basis, so we can create, in some cases, rather large panels north of 100,000 members, and in some cases a lot smaller than that, but in many cases we start small and get bigger as time goes on. But we run pretty much all kinds of projects through that platform, and it can be as simple as new product or ideation testing, all the way up to leveraging behavioral data from the DMP of the company. In some cases it can be set-top box data, or it could be digital data. But the ability to have a panel where we can connect behavioral data on a single source basis to the panel member, and then be able to look at those behaviors and survey directly into them. This seems to be a big trend, not only for us and on the community side, but even for the larger panel companies, which are now looking to figure out how do we connect to our clients' data and provide that insight. I think the benefit of what we do is that we're building custom panels, so our clients actually own the data. It's not the panel company that owns the respondent, it's the client that owns the respondent. So it really is their asset. And certainly from a privacy standpoint, et cetera, they can do a lot more with that than they can leveraging a third-party panel, where they don't necessarily own the members and don't necessarily know where those people come from. Whereas again, when we build it, we're pulling directly from their subscriber base or viewer base or whatever. So it's pretty exciting because not only are we able to connect the behavioral data to the survey data, the attitudinal data, but we can look at these people longitudinally and see, again, from the standpoint of testing content or testing new products or services, all the way through to the marketing of it, all the way through to the distribution, see, in fact, are people adopting this? What are they saying based on what we had found out initially when we did the initial testing? So it's really being able to track the consumer over time, unlike traditional survey work where you're doing sort of snapshots in time with different samples. And not necessarily talking to the same person. And this becomes an incredibly powerful tool for companies internally because while they're not going to do all of their research through the panel, obviously they want to look outside and look at competitive and other aspects of their business. This does give them again, a very fast, agile representative in most cases. I mean, these are not convenience panels. In many cases, we're trying to build these panels to be representative of the specific audience or platform that we're measuring for the client. So, and that's, for me, exciting because you now, like I said, have an engagement with the client that's ongoing. It's not just an RFP that comes in and you say, okay, we're going to bid on that RFP. We have, an established relationship with an ongoing conversation with the client literally every week, and looking at doing new projects and connecting the dots on different things that we're looking at with them.
So it sounds like you're relying on a company's first-party data, which is becoming a big talking point.
Yes.
Do you think that's the trend? And what about a company that may not really have up-to-date or any first-party data at this
Right.
time?
Obviously there's certainly many resources for third-party data. In some cases, we're not just specifically leveraging first-party data, but also third-party data. Obviously, the first-party data is better because we have essentially a 100% match rate on what we're doing, or certainly, pretty high match rate as we are pulling specifically those customers from the client database. But again, in some cases, not everybody has, the type of data, certainly, that maybe a distribution company might have. Certainly the television networks, don't, unless they have an OTT service now where they're actually able to go direct to consumer. So in those cases, we do try to look for, sort of third-party opportunities. We also do run our own panel, which is here in the U.S., and we have one in Canada as well. Both of them are around 250,000 members, so we can leverage that as well, and we're looking to match more data into that community or panel, and then we can leverage that again for work that's outside of the community for the client. Again, if you want to look at competitive viewers or competitive distribution services, whatever, you can then leverage our panel in addition to your own panel, and that's again something that we find to be certainly very important as we go forward, because clients don't always just want to talk to their own customers. Certainly it's very important that they do, but so that's another sort of added value piece that we're trying to build out for our clients too.
You've been doing community building for a number of years. Are you seeing any evolution in how the data is being used or gathered or applied?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think when community started, they were very much about, sort of better, faster, cheaper. Certainly, I think communities were really the start of, if you want to think of it, really the start of agile research in the marketplace. Because again, the client was able to sort of control the platform. They could use the platform in many cases. Certainly what we offered was DIY, and in addition to providing services on top of that. And most of these panels were 5,000 to 10,000 members, maybe maximum, sometimes 15,000. The trend really is now to not have sort of these smaller siloed communities within one company and across different brands, but actually build, we like to call it a mega community or an enterprise-wide community where we can now leverage, if you, in some cases, put all of these communities together in different organizations, you've now got 50, 60, 70,000 members across the organization, and you can leverage that. And so I think, going bigger is better. And again, when you then connect your DMP or, other specific first-party data, like, as I mentioned, OTT data, then you have a very powerful asset at that point. You have enough scale to actually do very interesting things with the data and with surveys on top of it that really give you, I think, more strategic insights. I think it's the other thing too, initially with communities, they were very, I would even call them light tactical. Most people were not using communities for very strategic work, and we're finding now with some of our larger clients who've really made the effort to build out these panels, to do a lot more strategic work and really rely on them. And in many cases, we're seeing, budgets from more traditional research being essentially, put into the panels because the companies are seeing, again, this is really sort of an asset, if you will, that the company's building. It's somewhat disruptive, obviously, to the traditional market research business, because now instead of going outside to vendors, they essentially are building an internal asset that we manage for them in many cases, but that they can also leverage directly themselves. Many cases, like I said, we work very closely with. Some cases it's the research department, in some cases it's the marketing department. These communities live in different places as well. It's not always just in the market research department.
So in terms of the use of data, do you find that it tends to fall into segmentation analysis? Is there a way of taking this data and matching it to like a Nielsen or a ComScore? How would you say the data is being used, the output?
Yes, I mean I think it's really more again looking at first-party data again, where the companies already have segments built out in their DMP and they're able to leverage those. There's certainly that element of it. The ability to, as I mentioned, create surveys where we can add additional context and data that we can then push into their DMP, and they can use that for additional modeling, et cetera. I mean, in some cases, we've done some work with Nielsen to actually look to try to integrate the marketing cloud that they have directly into some of these larger communities, and that's something we continue to work with Nielsen on, and even other platforms. If the clients in some cases already have a different platform, they may have Oracle, they may have Crux, which I think is now Salesforce. Depending on what clients might already have or what they don't have, or if they're looking for data from Nielsen, ComScore, certainly that is a capability that exists. So, but again, right now it's been more focused specifically on the first-party data. I think that's a trend we're going to see more of. And again, in looking at those types of opportunities, you need a fair amount of scale. You can't do something with 5,000 members, but you can do something with 50,000 members. So, again, I think that's what's sort of driving the trend to companies realizing, hey, I build this out and it's a larger asset. I like to sort of make the analogy that it's you're building essentially your own sort of measurement panel in a way, and now have the ability to actually survey into it. I mean, when I was a client, it would have been wonderful if I could have actually done survey work against the Nielsen panel. Certainly that was never something that was ever going to happen, but that was always sort of the wish, because if we could actually look at ratings from the night before and then go talk to those people specifically where the ratings came from, that would be a much better way of trying to understand why the viewers were doing what they were doing, as opposed to sort of running separate surveys over here and then trying to match that back to the Nielsen data, make sense of it.
So you've been in the research industry for a number of years. Where do you see the trend going? Like if you were to predict 5 years from now, what would you see for research?
I see essentially this model where companies will essentially tie into technology that we will and other companies will manage, and like I said, it'll be an ongoing relationship. This notion of running a big survey here and then looking at that data, but then the data sort of ages as time goes on, and especially in this day and age where change is so rapid, you really need that ability to talk to somebody today and maybe talk to them a week from now, and do that again on an ongoing basis and have it embedded within the company. So again, that the company owns the asset, is building out that asset, that asset really has currency for them, at least, maybe not for the industry at large, but certainly for them. And they can still do large survey studies, which I think will continue to be important, but I think it's really about this creation of a resource that links both behavioral data and attitudinal survey data, qualitative data, et cetera, and it's really, again, an ongoing relationship and an ongoing data stream. And again, I think automation is going to drive a lot of this as well as time goes on. AI certainly, one of the recent acquisitions we made was in essentially a BI platform that has also been adapted to really do a great job of handling market research data, which a lot of the platforms out there don't do. They're great for financial data and other data, but and you can customize them to be sort of research data friendly, but in most cases that's a lot of work, and the platform we acquired actually has the research capabilities on top of that. So we can actually take multiple data sources and bring them together, survey and behavioral, and report in a dashboard fashion, and again, do it in such a way that the client can actually manipulate the data. It's not something that is so difficult to figure out that the client doesn't want to actually use the tool. So I think it's really a combination of all those things, and the ability to give the client more control over this information, but also continue to provide evolution or innovation, I should say, really, of the platform, and continue to build it out and be able to add more pieces to it. And I think that's the other great thing about a platform. It doesn't necessarily have to be, we're not going to do everything. We're going to do a lot of things and build on that platform, but certainly there'll be other things out there that the client might want to leverage as well. And we certainly encourage that to some degree, because obviously the more the client uses the platform, the more they use the panel, no matter what they're doing, the stickier it becomes, the more data that's in there, the better they can make sense of it. And I think the key distinction with this is we're sort of making big data smaller and more contextual and more understandable, because we're putting it in a sort of in a panel, if you will, that is representative in many cases of the audience or the subscriber base that the client has. So it actually sort of takes the best of both worlds, I would like to say, in terms of the rigor of research and obviously the power of big data.
It sounds, because there's all this talk about the need for data science, but also ethnography.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's almost bringing it together to a certain degree.
Yes. I mean, I think in 5 years there will not be a research department and a data department. There will be a
Bring it back
information
together.
science department. Yes. And it's funny because when I started my career at HBO many years ago, that's really where we started. Again, we were a subscription-based service. And we were tying all of our financial data, our business affairs data, contract data, research data, Nielsen data together, and really trying to look holistically and figure out, what can we do to improve subscriber retention, minimize churn, all of that. And I think we're sort of coming full circle on that. It's funny. In fact, my first job at HBO, I spent about, I would say, 40% of my time actually writing code. Which I thought was actually just part of the market research business. And then things started to split apart, and it's funny because big data sort of got buried in the back room with the mainframe computers, and now I see, obviously, the reemergence of the importance of that. But again, I think big data alone, behavioral data tells a story, survey data tells a story, but together they tell a better story. And I think we've seen the results of that quite a lot, and I think a number of our clients would definitely agree with that.